Chapter 9, A Plan Takes Shape. Dewey wasn't really listening to the radio, but when the broadcast was interrupted by 3 loud beeps, he put down the box of waxes and polishes, went over to the radio, and turned up the volume. Emergency alert. Hurricane force winds moving rapidly into the listening area. Winds gusting to 80 miles per hour, damaging conditions in effect through Sunday morning. Take immediate shelter. "Oh, rot," cried Dewey. He burst through the garage door, ran down the barn aisle and out the front doors, slammed and barred them, and raced up the road. The rain coming down now was torrential, but he didn't even stop for a coat. "Psst! Sleepyhead," Nanny called out to Burdock. With Dewey gone, Nanny had quickly gathered the group for a meeting. Everyone was there, except for Burdock, who was in the feed room, on top of a box of grain sacks. By leaning her head over her pen's edge, Nanny could glimpse just a ruffle of gray fur, slowly rising and falling. Except for his slow, even breathing, Burdock didn't move an inch. "Burdock!" called Nanny again. "Burdock, love!" There was an excitement in Nanny's voice. "Burdock!" "What? Where?" Burdock awoke with a start, flipping over to face the disturbance, his one eye opening wide. "Is the barn on fire?" "Oh, no, dear," said Nanny. "We're having a meeting. We need you." Burdock flopped back onto his side, stretched out his gray arms, and languidly kneaded the air with his broad, mitteny paws. "I was dreaming about chickens." His voice trailed off and he yawned again, his tongue unfurling like a glossy pink ribbon. "Don't any of you ever sleep?" He closed his eye, pulled his paws up under his chin, and turned over. But Nanny urged him again, and soon Burdock arrived and settled himself on his coil of rope. His sour expression and crumpled whiskers said he was bristling slightly to be awake. But in truth, Burdock was curious. What was going on now? "Before Dewey gets back," said Nanny, "let's talk. Shall I call roll?" "We're all here," exclaimed Figgy. "Just talk." Nanny hadn't dared to jump into the central aisle in case Dewey should suddenly reappear, so she was again standing with her front hooves propped up on the middle board of her pen. The other animals gathered around as best they could. "Figgy believes," Nanny began, "that she can dig a tunnel under her wall to the outside, big enough for me to fit through. She's already started to dig, and it seems possible. Right, Figgy?" Nanny looked to Figgy. "As far as I can figure," explained Figgy, "it's the only way out, and I think it could work." As she began to talk, Burdock noticed a glister in Foggy's eyes, the kind you get when you have latched onto a major idea, or a major idea has latched onto you. "And if she can get me out," continued Nanny, "the hope is I can knock that big bar off the barn doors. Unlock them." She paused. Nanny was far from sure she really could do this, but what other chance did they have? "And then I can open your stalls and we can all get out." "I'll say," said Tug, "aren't you a clever clog?" "There's one thing," said Figgy, jumping in. "If I dig out all that dirt, we need somewhere to put it, some way to hide it. Because, of course, Dewey will notice if my pen suddenly fills up with a great mound of dirt. But I think I can push some of it to you, Fluff, under our shared wall, and some of it to you, Nanny and Tick, under our wall. And can you distribute it around your pens? You know, spread it about under the straw to get rid of it?" "Yes, yes," cried Tick exuberantly. "I can help. I can do that. Can't I, Mama?" He bounded lightly up and down on his little black feet. "That would be an enormous help, love," said Nanny with a nod. Unable to contain himself, Tick gamboled a few enthusiastic laps around his pen. "And Fluff, you on board?" asked Figgy. Absolutely, said Fluff. My wish is your command. Uh, don't you mean point well taken, said Figgy. How long do you think it will take? Asked Mrs. Brown quietly. I don't know, said Figgy. A day or two? I will say this. As dreary as all this rain is, we should at least be grateful that Dewey can't burn down the barn when it's this wet. Absolutely true, said Pull. At least it's giving us a little time. But wait. He paused as a thought came to him. Leaning forward, he asked, Won't Dewey see the hole? Not if I can help it, explained the pig matter-of-factly. I'm going to cover it with hay when I'm not digging. Easy peasy. She looked pleased. Just as much as Figgy loved a chunk of buttermilk cornbread or a dollop of beans baked with maple syrup, the pig could appreciate a well-designed strategy. Marvelous, said Pull. We have a plan. Cautious relief could be heard seeping into his voice. An escape plan. The wind bashed the barn suddenly, and the whole structure trembled. It made the animals feel momentarily unmoored. But, Mama, came the small voice of Tick, if we can get out, then where will we all go? Tick didn't think he was asking a big question. He was young enough to assume that his elders had that part figured out. But none of them, except maybe Burdock if you count his dreaming, had even let themselves imagine that far. Fluff was lying in her pen, nervously listening to the relentless pummeling of wind, when she saw a ghost. It swooped down through the murky dark at the top of the barn and hovered for a moment, not even 10 feet above her head. Help! She bleated. Help, Figgy, look! Figgy was digging at the hole, snout and hooves scraping and gouging. But at Fluff's cry, she turned and looked up just as a white, feathery shape glided a silent half circle, flickered out the window, and was gone. Oh! Figgy breathed, her voice hushed with awe. A barn owl! I've never seen an owl in this barn, whispered Mrs. Brown, who had been listening. There's an owl here? Apparently, said Figgy. There was, though why he would go out in weather like this, I haven't the foggiest idea.